SpaceX just secured approval for 76 Starship launches per year at Cape Canaveral's Launch Complex 37. The environmental assessment authorizes 152 booster landings annually, with two massive 600-foot integration towers ready by summer 2026. But here's the problem. Every Starship launch forces Blue Origin and ULA to clear their pads due to massive safety zones. So, how did SpaceX convince the Air Force to approve this despite competitor protests? What data did they present that could reshape launch operations for everyone at the Cape? The answer lies in something SpaceX did that no other company bothered to do: actual explosive testing. While everyone else relied on theoretical calculations, SpaceX went out and blew things up to prove their rocket was safer than regulators assumed. But we're getting ahead of ourselves. First, let's understand what SpaceX just won approval for. Launch Complex 37 isn't just getting a facelift. The company is building two complete launch integration towers, each standing 600 feet tall. That's 130 feet taller than anything at Starbase or Kennedy's LC-39A. These towers are designed for Starship version 4, meaning SpaceX is already building infrastructure for rockets that don't even exist yet. Each pad gets its own launch mount, integration tower, flame trench, and deluge system, plus two additional standalone towers on top for rapid turnaround operations. The entire facility is engineered for back-to-back missions with minimal downtime. SpaceX confirmed construction is already underway, with full operations targeted for summer 2026. And here's where things get interesting. This gives SpaceX 3 operational Starship pads on Florida's Space Coast, one at Kennedy's LC-39A and 2 at Cape Canaveral's SLC-37. 3 pads capable of 76 annual missions means they're planning roughly 25 launches per pad per year. That's more than one Starship launch every 2 weeks from Florida alone. Now, why does this terrify Blue Origin and ULA? The problem isn't just competition, it's physics. Starship is an absolute monster. Standing over 400 feet tall, it burns through 11 million pounds of liquid methane and oxygen. A fully fueled Starship carries approximately 1,030 tons of methane alone, not counting the liquid oxygen. When you add it all up, you're looking at a flying bomb that makes everything else at the Cape look tiny. Blue Origin's New Glenn is impressive, sure. Even the upcoming New Glenn 9x4 variant will stand nearly as tall as Starship, but it only produces about 1/3 of Super Heavy's liftoff thrust and carries significantly less fuel. Here's where the math gets brutal. NASA, the Space Force, and the FAA currently assume that any explosion involving liquid methane and oxygen has the same explosive power as an equal weight of TNT. That's a 100% TNT equivalent ratio. Conservative? Absolutely, but also understandable since nobody had real-world data on explosions at this scale. This assumption forces Starship to maintain massive safety zones around its launch sites, far larger than any other rocket at Cape Canaveral. And when SpaceX wants to launch frequently, those safety zones become weapons. Colonel Brian Chapman, commander of Space Launch Delta 45, confirmed what competitors feared. Starship launches will restrict access for nearby companies. The Space Force's environmental impact maps show potential restricted zones around SLC-37 that overlap with pads operated by ULA, Relativity Space, and Stoke Space. Translation: when SpaceX is preparing a Starship launch, everyone else has to clear their pads and stop working. Blue Origin and ULA formally opposed SpaceX's expansion plans, accusing the company of monopolizing launch infrastructure. And they had a point. How could Florida's Space Coast handle this level of disruption when other providers needed access to the same facilities? But then SpaceX played their ace. The company presented new safety zone maps to regulators, and these zones were significantly smaller, not through wishful thinking or aggressive lobbying, but through data. Real explosive yield test data from controlled detonations of liquid methane and oxygen mixtures. SpaceX conducted actual tests, measured the results, added conservative safety margins, and proved the danger zones could safely shrink without putting anyone at risk. The implications were massive. If the explosive yield was lower than the theoretical 100% TNT equivalent, then safety zones could be reduced. More compact safety zones meant less disruption to neighboring launch providers. Everyone could operate more efficiently without SpaceX's operations shutting down the entire Cape. And here's the twist that makes this even more interesting. The Commercial Space Federation, which includes Blue Origin, ULA, and SpaceX itself, is now pushing the government to revise that 100% TNT assumption. Industry experts argue it should be no more than 25% based on available data. That fourfold reduction would be transformational for launch scheduling and pad availability. But wait, there's more irony. Blue Origin's New Glenn and ULA's Vulcan both run on liquefied natural gas, which is chemically similar to methane. So if the current 100% standard stays in place, they'll be limited by the exact same rule they're using to fight SpaceX. Their own future operations depend on getting this ratio changed. Colonel Chapman seems optimistic about the path forward. He expects these danger zones will shrink once sufficient test data is collected. The Space Force, SpaceX, and Blue Origin are already collaborating on liquid oxygen and methane testing, with most critical analysis expected to peak in 2026. If those results confirm what SpaceX's preliminary data suggests, it becomes a game changer for the entire industry. This is SpaceX's brilliant solution. Prove through science that Starship is safer than everyone assumed, shrink the safety zones, and enable what Musk calls airport-like operations, where rockets launch, land, and turn around rapidly without months of scheduling chaos. The vision is audacious. By 2035, the Space Coast aims to hit 300 to 350 launches per year. Starship, with its massive 150 metric ton payload capacity, could actually reduce the total number of launches needed while dramatically increasing the amount of material delivered to orbit. One Starship can do the work of multiple smaller rockets. But there's a deeper problem nobody wants to talk about: infrastructure capacity. Some experts argue the real issue isn't safety zones or competition. It's that Florida's Space Coast simply doesn't have enough physical space for this explosion of launch providers. The logical solution would be to build more facilities, but available land is running out. Most remaining areas are too close to residential zones or major roads. This creates a zero-sum game where companies fight over the same limited launch windows and facilities. Yet, not everyone sees this as a crisis. Many in the industry welcome the competition, saying it's energizing to see a once quiet Space Coast now buzzing with activity from multiple players. For the first time in decades, there's a real race to innovate. Some hope this rivalry will push companies to work in parallel, each driving the others to improve. But let's be realistic. The Space Force's attention has clearly shifted from ULA to SpaceX, and that change hasn't gone unnoticed. SpaceX has built its reputation on low-cost, high-frequency, high-performance launches. ULA's rockets cost more and face frequent delays. The contrast is stark. One online commenter sarcastically wrote, "Yeah, SpaceX, stop getting in the way of us launching our overpriced ship once every 5 years." The numbers support this shift. SpaceX continues securing the largest and most high-profile missions under the National Security Space Launch Phase 3 program. Meanwhile, Blue Origin wants to increase New Glenn's flight rate, but keeps hitting production delays. The company can't build rockets fast enough to compete with SpaceX's cadence. So here's what this all means. SpaceX didn't just ask for permission to launch more rockets. They fundamentally changed the rules of the game by proving the existing safety regulations were based on outdated assumptions. Their explosive testing data could reshape how every methane-fueled rocket operates at Cape Canaveral, not just Starship. Blue Origin and ULA spent months fighting this approval, claiming SpaceX would monopolize the Space Coast. But the truth is more complex. If SpaceX's data holds up and safety zones shrink to 25% of current TNT equivalent calculations, everyone wins. New Glenn and Vulcan both use similar fuel, meaning they'll benefit from the same reduced restrictions SpaceX is pioneering. The bigger question is whether Florida's infrastructure can handle this explosive growth. With 300-plus launches planned annually by 2035 and physical space running out, something has to give. Will we see collaboration between competitors to share facilities? Will new spaceports emerge outside Florida? Or will this turn into an all-out war for launch pad access? What we're witnessing isn't just SpaceX getting approval for 76 Starship missions. It's the transformation of space access from a slow, expensive, government-dominated industry into something that looks more like commercial aviation. Rapid turnaround, high frequency, multiple providers competing on cost and performance. One thing's certain. The next 2 years will determine whether Musk's airport-like operations vision becomes reality or crashes into the limitations of Earth-based infrastructure. What do you think? Will SpaceX's competitors adapt and thrive or get squeezed out entirely? Drop your predictions in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of every major development in the new space race, hit that subscribe button for New Space Review. We're tracking this story as it unfolds. Thanks for watching.